would start with kind of a congratulations for all the University of Georgia, for the 8th straight year. UGA was ranked in the top 20 of all public universities, and I think it was the U.S. News World Report, which is pretty remarkable to do that for 8 straight years. I think when you look and say how many schools have been able to do that, 8 straight years being in the top 20 of public institutions, it's pretty incredible. That starts with great leadership. I think President Moorhead has done an awesome job with that. We sell that in recruiting. Makes me proud because I am an alumnus and I have my degree from here. So it makes it very worthy to be a University of Georgia grad and proud of what we've been able to do from an academic standpoint. I think is great. Moving on into our team, Ron informed me that we have the longest injury list we've ever had since being here. So it continues to grow, and I think that's a trend across college football. You very rarely hear me talk about our guys being injured or woe is me. I don't think it's something that you can control. We practice how we practice, and for a couple years we've been really fortunate to not have very many injuries, and I always hear about other teams, and this year it seems to be the theme across. I know Shane had a lot at South Carolina, and there's a lot of them in SEC opponents, but we certainly have more than we've ever had. So that becomes a hurdle. We got to do a good job overcoming that, and we got to be very resourceful as coaches in how we use the players we do have. With that, I'll open it up. Obviously at UAB, we're moving on to UAB, and I'm excited to play these guys. I've known Coach Dilfer for a while. I don't have a personal relationship with him, but I do think a lot of him as a coach, their staff. I know a lot of guys on their staff. Eddie, who was here with us for a long time, does an incredible job, and looking forward to playing those guys this week.
What have you seen out of UAB on if you've got any for the first 2 weeks of the season?
Well, they got some good football players. They got really good athletes. I don't think the record, indicates that, but they play, and you watch them, and I'm like, man, defensively they do some 4-down and some 3-down. They got really good backs. They got good skill players, athletic quarterback who extends plays. They play really hard. They had a weird situation the other night with ULL where they had rain delay and different things in there, but they got a very talented football team, especially in their conference.
Speaking of rain, Coach, I think I saw you come out and pregame multiple times to check the weather. Walk me through all the processes and the things you have to consider when weather's an impact.
And you consider which way to kick the ball, whether to take the ball, which way you're going to go. Is it going to rain more later than earlier because it impacts the game? It's not really an advantage for anybody because both teams got to play in it, but you would rather have possessions not in the rain versus in the rain, and that's just see the turf, how much of an effect the rain that had fallen had affected the field, but that's it.
Kirby, what more do you want to see out of Carson as he enters his full game as starter? Like what areas does he need to grow still?
It's different every game. I think we challenge him with different things. What I've been most proud of is his composure, number one, which I never doubted. He has a great demeanor about him that he handles positive and negative almost the same. As a matter of fact, there was a touchdown Saturday. I saw him celebrate for the first time, and that's really good. Like when you see that emotion, there was one of the touchdowns in the second half that he got a little emotional and excited. I think our guys kind of rally around him when he does that. Stepping up in the pocket. There's a couple times that he started losing a little confidence and he started stepping back. He's got to be willing to step up, like they talk about in race car drivers. When the smoke's there, you got to go right through it. There's a lot of smoke in there sometimes, especially when people pressure you. You got to be willing to step up and go through it, and not always out and around it, because you can't always outrun it that way. So, but I'm really pleased with the way he's playing, but certainly things he can continue to work on.
Yeah, kind of along that vein, going back and reviewing, can you see any commonalities on the red zone issues, and what would you like to see you guys do better down there going forward?
It really is both ways. It was red zone defense where we've been remarkable and elite. I think we were one in the country last year, and we had 2 red zone opportunities that we did not capitalize on defensively, which was really the difference in the first half. I mean, at the end of the day, the difference in the first half was red area play both ways. Things we can improve on: you have to be able to run the ball in the red area, and you have to be able to stop the run. We did not. We let somebody run the ball in on us on defense, which is a no-no at Georgia, and we didn't we didn't have positive 1st and 10 plays in the red area on offense, which that gets you in trouble too, because you usually have 4 downs down there to go for it, but you can't do that if you're 4th and 10. If you're 4th and 1 or 2 or 3, you can. So we got to have positive plays both ways to get better. We certainly have to improve in that area.
Yeah, you touched on injuries off the top there. 2 of your offensive tackles, Marius Mims and Austin Blaski. What's the update on them?
Yeah, I think we're going to get Blaski back today. I don't know if he's 100%, but he's going to be able to practice. Mims' ankle sprain was bad. He's going to have tightrope surgery, so he'll have surgery on that, similar to what Cash had done, similar to what Lawson Lucky had done. So we don't know how long that'll be, but he'll be back. It's just a matter of how long.
Kirby, when Aaron Rodgers went down in the NFL, there was a lot of talk about injuries happening on grass versus turf. When you've done your data, when you've had injuries in practice, turf versus grass, have you seen any correlation between more injured players on one type of surface or the other, and had anything when you're dealing with now affected to turf, the artificial turf?
No, most of the indicators we have outside of our practices suggest a little more on turf. I think that's what the NFL would probably argue, that more on turf and less on natural grass. We're on natural grass a lot more here than we are on turf. We keep independent studies of where ours happen. Ron and his staff report that, submit it so that you can follow it. We don't have any indication that ours is more or less on turf than grass. It's actually almost exactly the same. And ironically, most of ours this year have been in games. So that's where you'd rather your injuries happen in games if they're going to happen at all. We don't want injuries to happen, but when they've happened in games this year, they've obviously been on grass.
Yeah, Kirby, going back to Carson, what specifically did you learn about him in terms of handling adversity, going into the locker room with a 11-point halftime deficit, sort of rallying the offense to come back there in the second half?
Well, he didn't rally the offense to come back. I mean, we had a 13 and 11 play drive in the first half that he came out to be 3 points. You know what I mean? So like that's hard to do. If you look at it, like that's really hard. You can't have a 14 play drive and an 11 play drive and get 3 points usually. That's just, I mean, you usually have turnovers, right? And we didn't have that in those situations. So it wasn't a matter of that could happen, and you're going to get stopped at times. You're going to struggle at times, but we struggled less in the first half than we did against other opponents. So I thought he did a good job keeping his composure though, and showed his resiliency.
Kirby, I know you don't concern yourself too much with outside noise or fans, but in terms of the structure, your oversight of the offense, I mean, everybody wants to just throw Mike Bobo under the bus anytime anything goes wrong, it seems like. Can you share how you game plan for that complementary football? I know earlier you said first game plan leaned a little bit more on the defense because they were experienced. Is there still some of that going into each game?
No. I would say the first game when I made that comment, it was more about Carson's first start and trying to protect him some. But the offense that we've played this year is the exact same offense as we've played for the last 3 years. Look at the plays. Anybody that knows football would tell you that the plays are the same. Our execution in the red area hasn't been great, and hadn't scored as many points. We haven't been as explosive and as dynamic. And some of that has to do with players being out, and some of that has to do with executing. But very comfortable with where we are offensively.
Coach, the 3rd and 16, I believe you guys pressure right there. What went into the decision to pressure, and when you go back and coach it up, what was to be corrected?
Well, pressure's a good thing, and we think that pressure and quarterbacks affect them. Number one, doesn't give them all day to throw the ball. Number two, it's success against how the offense you're playing handles that. So what is their success rate when you pressure? And that's something you look at each game. You don't do anything 100% of the time, right? You do something and you pitch. You throw fastball, curveball, changeup. Boom, you better have 3 pitches. That just came in the process of pitching. And last time I checked, the pressure didn't cause a touchdown. You know what I mean? The 3 missed tackles and the poor angles probably resulted in the touchdown. So usually when somebody does something well, you probably didn't do something well. They did. They executed well. They hit a good play, but they didn't score because of the pressure. They scored because we missed 2 tackles.
Coach, you kind of talked about fixing those first half issues and figuring out the game plan, stuff like that. just trying to work on that. You talked about at the end of the game. What have the conversations kind of been like with your coordinators to try and relieve those first half issues and get the ball rolling a little bit faster?
Well, I thought really our first half issues revolved around our defense first possession would be the biggest thing. I think you got to start fast. I think historically, defensively, somebody can do the study, but we usually start pretty fast on defense. Now, Georgia Tech game, I know that was the first possession of a game that we gave up a touchdown last year, and that happened third game this year on a team that had did a good job, came in and got on rhythm, and there's still things we did. Like, are we talking about this if we tackle him on 3rd and 15? I don't know. I'm really thinking about UAB, so I'm trying to keep you guys happy and appease you, but I'm very pleased with where things are. I'm not panicking in any kind of way because South Carolina has a good team, and we're figuring out who we are. We're figuring out who we are with our identity, and I think our coaching staff and players and complete organization is doing a great job. You guys just aren't happy with the results, but I'm very happy with the way our guys fought back and came back and overcame.
Speaking of UAB, going into this week, if you're without Amarius Mims, do you stick with Xavier Truss at right tackle and Dillon at left guard?
I don't know that. I mean, it's going to depend on the health of some of the other O-linemen, where's Blaskey's health, where do we get the best 5 from. So a lot of that will play itself out over the next 3-4 days. But I do think Truss gives us that flexibility, and he did a nice job on the run the other day to be able to go do that.
Kirby, I want to ask you about Carson. Perception is not always reality, but it seems like his first 3 games, first time he gets the chance to kind of take a shot downfield, he's successful with it. It's almost like there's a little bit of a kickstart there. Would you agree with that? And what do you think kind of goes into that for him? Is it something that kind of maybe loosens him up a little bit?
I don't really understand what you're asking, to be honest. You want more shots downfield? There's shots on a lot of plays that the look's not there. If it's middle field closed, you don't just take a shot. The quarterback has a read. They're in quarters and the safety's deep. You don't just take a shot, right? So what he's really good at is one of the best I've been around at seeing the coverage, knowing what it is, and then knowing where to go with the ball. We did have a little more pressure the other day than we're used to, and he did a nice job adjusting to that. I mean, they got hurt pressuring. The play to Rah-Rah later in the game was pressure, and he hit the right guy on the right look. So I guess I don't know if that answers your question or not, because I don't know perception, and I really don't know your reality or anybody's reality, because I don't judge other people's perception. I only look at what happens in the game and what happens in practice, and feel very good that Carson's doing a good job.
Are you prepared to travel next month after a comfortable 4 weeks at Sanford? And looking further down the line, with teams like Tennessee and Ole Miss, how is the team strengthening its game to get ready for those matchups?
I ain't even thought about Tennessee and Ole Miss, and I ain't thought about traveling. I mean, it didn't even cross my mind. So I'll respect the question as best I can, that I'm worried about UAB and figuring out how we can be more resourceful with the players we got that are healthy.
So we talk about still learning this team's identity. How much did you learn though this past weekend as you move forward now?
Well, I learned more than I did in the other 2 games. I can assure you that, because the quality of opponent went up, and we responded to some adverse situations. You learn more about the truth too. The truth is what you've done is who you are, and that's right now who we are is a 3-0 team that has played 3 imperfect games, and I'm still looking for the first perfect one.
Hey Kirby, when you have a kicker who has a couple misses, as a coach, how do you handle that? Do you talk to him? Do you encourage him? I know kicking can be so mental.
Yeah, you definitely talk to them. You try to find out the whys and how they're feeling, what's going on emotionally, especially when it's a freshman, and you try to talk to them. And we've got guys on our team that he's close to. We've got guys that work with the kickers within our organization that do a good job, and you just try to get information and you try to help him every way you can. The first thing that'll help him is scoring touchdowns, because the extra points are easier than field goals.
Hey Coach, what are your initial thoughts on Trent Dilfer's style of offense that he's coaching up in their quarterbacks?
Really impressed. I mean, his offensive coordinator, Alex Morrison, was at Alabama forever. Chris Mortensen's son, he was at Alabama and behind all the offenses, worked with Bill O'Brien, worked with Sark, was there when I was there. I have a lot of respect for Alex. He waited his turn, and he got an opportunity to go be the coordinator there. So I see a lot of flavor in his offense of a lot of the offenses that had been there at Alabama, and I'm sure Trent imparts his knowledge on that as well.
Kirby, back to injuries. Any update on Kendall and his situation? And it looked like Roderick Robinson also came off a little bit banged up.
Yeah, Roderick got a high ankle sprain. We'll find out how he is today. Kendall had an MCL that he's had before. He had one last year, but I don't know how significant it is, and find out where he is today as well.
You ever cross paths with Trent? Any travels, any relationship with him at all? And any of your kids ever gone to one of his coaching camps back in the day?
No. I've only had conversations with Trent about quarterbacks that he trained during the recruiting process. You might call and say, hey, what do you think of this kid? What do you think of this kid? How was he out there at this camp? That kind of thing. But I've never, I've talked to him on the phone, but I've never had a personal relationship with him.
Continuing the theme of injuries, can you update us on Javon, McConkey, and Swirling?
Yep. Javon is day-to-day. Like I said after the game, thought he might be close. Maybe closer this week. I think with the recovery, he would be closer to being able to go, but I don't know. McConkey is more than likely out this week. We're resting him, trying to get him back, and we don't have a timeline on him because it's a very unique injury. So it's like everything else you say, well, what was the last high ankle sprain? What was the last MCL? What was the last shoulder? But it's different, so we don't have something to measure that by. And then the other one you asked about was Pierce. Don't know when we'll get Pierce back.
Kirby, I saw you were talking about how there'd be a lot of these close games, and we haven't seen that this year in college football. Do you think that the more liberal transfer rules have led to more parity? You think that's kind of what we're seeing right now?
No clue. I mean, that's good speculation. I could see that. I try not to theorize those things. I don't know. I really just try to look at our team and say, where are we relative to where we need to be? I can't even keep up with all the other games out there and how much parity there may be or may not be. It's still not what the NFL is. I mean, the NFL is built to have parity, and maybe that's good for the college game that there is more parity, if in fact there is. But I don't have an explanation for why it is. I really don't.
Yeah, Ra Thomas, a big catch to start that second half on Saturday. How have you seen him continue to integrate himself in the offense, especially coming over as a transfer?
Yeah, he had his best practices last week. Thought he did a really good job in the practices leading up to the game. He is getting more and more confidence. Again, he was like a true freshman in terms of vocabulary of the offense, and that has gotten better with every week. He's getting so much more confident with every week, and thank goodness he is, because we need him. We need him to keep coming, and we need him to keep coming along.
Hey, Coach, so you talked earlier about being pretty happy with where the offense is at and pretty happy with where Carson is at right now. So, not to speak about any other team specifically, but it's not always easy for some of these programs to move on from quarterbacks they've had for a while, and the transition hasn't been so smooth. So what do you think that you guys have done here to make that transition a lot smoother than maybe other programs may experience?
Well, I think retention's important. And I want to clarify. Carson has done a good job. I don't know what you guys write, read, or hear, because you listen to a lot more of it than I do. I don't know. Like, I go by his week of practice, his preparation, and his execution. And I'm very pleased with that. I mean, he makes good decisions with the ball. Well, that happened the last 2 years when nobody was asking about him. Nobody was asking about Carson Beck. Nobody asked about Carson Beck for 2 years. But he was out there doing the same thing he's doing now. He was getting better, and that allowed for a smooth transition. Like the fact that he was hearing the exact same plays, exact same calls, and everybody thinks it's some kind of different offense. It's the exact same. It's not different. The results have not been the same. I mean, that's statistical proof. But he's transitioned well because of the fact he's in the offense that he's been, and his strengths are different than Stetson's. I mean, the one thing he's really good at, he was a great baseball player. This guy catches the ball and gets it out of his hand and is very accurate. That's baseball. That's boom, boom, boom. He can do that. You know, he does that well. And been very pleased with what he's done. And we got to get better results, that's for sure. But I'm certainly pleased with what both of them have done.
Let's take 2 more questions.
With Pierce and Lawson both out, how does that influence, if at all, your ability to go 12 personnel or just get the reps that you want from that position of the group in practice?
We did it all last week. You know, we went 12 in the game, and we'll always carry 12 personnel.
You talked about Ra just a second ago, but you know, on Dominic Lovett as well, another transfer coming in. What have you seen from his impact in the receiving game, and then also in those offshoot in the run game as well?
Yeah, most of his receptions so far have been run game receptions, and then some really critical third downs he's made plays in the slot. So I've seen his confidence grow. He was probably further along than Ra in terms of learning the offense, understanding the offense, and he came from an offense that was you know, somewhat similar. So he's had an easier transition as far as picking things up. But he's been a great kid in practice. He's full of energy. He competes. We've tried to implement, tell him, hey, look, man, you got to go strike people and block people to be an elite player, and he's trying his best to get better at that. But he's done well at the supplementary run plays, the perimeter run plays.
Thank you.